Welcome to this explainer, everyone. Today, we're embarking on what I like to call a cinematic investigation into, honestly, one of the greatest historical anomalies of the modern world. We're looking at how a tiny, swampy, sea-battered nation managed to become the world's very first economic superpower. Let's unpack the brilliant innovations and the really heavy, complex legacy of the Dutch Golden Age. Okay, let's dive right into this. It's a genuine historical mystery, isn't it? How did a tiny, flooded country rule the world? Back in the 17th century, the Dutch Republic was geographically tiny, largely below sea level, and home to just about 1.5 million people. Yet somehow, they managed to absolutely dominate global finance, maritime logistics, and international trade. No way that happens by accident. To put that scale into perspective, just imagine a population of 1.5 million people. That's, roughly the size of a modern mid-sized city today. Now imagine that single city controlling a massive global empire stretching across Southeast Asia and the Americas, an empire 50 times the size of their own homeland. To understand how they achieve this seemingly impossible anomaly, we really need to look at the very specific conditions that birthed their nation.
Part 1. The Crucible, War, and Tolerance. To find the secret recipe for this empire, we have to look at the intense crucible of war and migration that birthed it.
So, the Dutch Republic was quite literally forged in the fires of the 80 Years' War against the Spanish Habsburg Empire. It was this grueling, decades-long fight for independence. But a pivotal economic shift happened right in the middle of all this chaos. In 1585, Spanish forces laid siege to and captured the bustling hub of Antwerp. This triggered absolute economic panic and a massive brain drain. Tens of thousands of merchants, artisans, and financiers fled the southern Netherlands in a panic, heading straight north to Amsterdam. And crucially, they brought their capital and their global trade networks right along with them. This sudden influx of talent bred a really unique culture of extreme pragmatism. You see, while the rest of Europe was busy tearing itself apart over religion and burning heretics, the Dutch Republic chose a completely different path: tolerance. By offering enforceable civil rights and a safe haven for Protestants, Jews, and quietly, even Catholics, they attracted the exact skilled refugees and capital required to launch an economic empire. It wasn't necessarily some grand modern idealism, It was just incredibly good business.
Part 2. The Hardware, Maritime Innovation. Let's move to and see how this builds into the physical, technological hardware that gave the Dutch their edge over the rest of Europe. Enter a true marvel of 17th century engineering, a specialized cargo ship called the fluyt. Think of it almost like the modern shipping container, a simple innovation that completely revolutionized global logistics. The fluyt featured this highly distinctive pear-shaped hull with a shallow draft, which was absolutely perfect for navigating shallow rivers and coastal waters. But its true genius was its ruthless efficiency. Using simplified block and tackle rigging, it could be sailed by a remarkably tiny crew of just 10 to 15 men. And unlike the heavily armed merchant ships of their European rivals, the standard fluyt was completely unarmed. They dedicated literally every single inch of its interior to lucrative cargo. Now, the crucial point is that because of these exact design innovations, the fluyt slashed shipping freight rates by an astonishing 20 to 30% compared to their rivals. That is a massive difference. It was an insurmountable competitive edge, allowing the Dutch to completely corner the highly lucrative Baltic grain and timber trade, which actually formed the real bedrock of their commercial power. Just let the gravity of this statistic sink in for a second. By 1670, this hyper-efficient design meant the Dutch merchant fleet totaled 568,000 tons. Guys, that is nearly half of Europe's entire shipping capacity, controlled entirely by one tiny nation. They had essentially monopolized the physical movement of goods around the world. It's wild to think about. Part 3. The Software, Inventing Modern Capitalism. Because, as we know, ships alone don't build a global empire. You need a way to actually pay for them and manage the immense risk. And boy, did they figure out how to pay for them. In a span of just 2 decades, the Dutch fundamentally rewrote the rules of global finance. In 1602, they founded the VOC and the world's first formal stock exchange to fund it. Boom. By 1609, they established the Bank of Amsterdam, which was essentially the world's first central bank, to guarantee coin quality and make seamless transfers possible. And then by 1621, the West India Company was launched to mirror their Asian trade over in the Atlantic. It was a rapid-fire cascade of financial innovation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that the VOC, or the Dutch East India Company, wasn't just a business in the way we think of one today. It was a state-imposed merger designed specifically to eliminate domestic competition and pool massive resources. It actually became the world's first publicly traded multinational corporation. Ordinary citizens across the Republic could buy fractional shares on the brand new Amsterdam Stock Exchange, and it was all backed by a strict government monopoly on Asian trade. And the returns from this? Absolutely staggering. At its absolute peak, the market capitalization of the VOC reached 78 million guilders. When adjusted for inflation and economic context, economists estimate that is roughly equivalent to 7.9 trillion US dollars today. 7.9 trillion. It completely dwarfs modern tech giants. For 2 centuries, this stood as the largest commercial enterprise on planet Earth.
Part 4. The Dark Cost. Funding the Golden Age. We must make a hard, factual pivot now to look at the hidden poison of this story, the profound human atrocities and violence that funded this immense wealth.
The data here is incredibly sobering. According to historical records, approximately 1.7 million people were enslaved by Dutch slavers from the 17th to the 19th centuries, across both the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. It was a brutal, systematic, yet highly profitable engine for their mercantile expansion. These massive corporations essentially functioned as autonomous colonial powers. The West India Company actively managed the transatlantic slave trade and financed brutal sugar plantations in the Americas. Meanwhile, the VOC operated with its very own private army. They wielded the legal right to wage war, build forts, and enact extreme violence and exploitation across the Indonesian archipelago, all to maintain their unyielding grip on the spice trade monopolies.
Part 5. A Modern Reckoning. Today, modern society and cultural institutions are actively grappling with this deeply layered, dual legacy of undeniable brilliance and undeniable brutality. This reckoning is unfolding across Dutch cultural institutions right now. For example, in 2019, the Amsterdam Museum actually stopped using the term Golden Age to better reflect the era's poverty and colonial past. In 2021, the Rijksmuseum hosted a landmark dedicated slavery exhibition. And recently, in 2024, the National Holocaust Museum opened. Institutions are really shifting their narratives to impartially acknowledge that magnificent cultural triumphs, like the art of Rembrandt and Vermeer, were deeply, deeply intertwined with enslaved labor and colonial violence.
I want to leave you with this thought from the 17th century Dutch philosopher Baruch Spinoza. The aim of philosophy is not to ridicule, lament, or condemn human actions, but to understand them. History isn't just a simple story of heroes or villains, right? It's like a giant puzzle, complex, layered, and completely intertwined. The Dutch invented modern capitalism, built ships that literally changed the world, and fostered tolerance while simultaneously perpetuating some of history's darkest systems of exploitation. Our goal as focused learners is to hold all these facts together to truly understand them. So as we look at the immense wealth driving our own global economy today, we have to ask, what hidden costs might we still be ignoring? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.